I love that the launch of the Analogue Duo coincides with all of the PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16 content I've been making these last few weeks, because it means I have several videos at the ready for those new to the platform to learn about it. Still, with pre-orders going out recently, I figured it was a good time to make a video specifically tailored toward onboarding people who were experiencing this system for the first time with Analogue's take on it. This is Little Akiba Games, I'm Patrick, welcome back to the shop. So you just bought an Analogue Duo, which is a region-free, all upgrades included, HDMI-connected new model of the Turbo Duo. It's also most likely the best version of the Duo at the end of the day because Analogue is known for the quality of their hardware above all else. So congratulations on owning the best long-term version of gaming's best-kept secret from the late 80s to mid-90s. If you're one of those buyers I'm specifically targeting with this video, getting introduced to the system through this device, you probably went from feeling like nobody ever heard of this system back in the day to feeling like everyone was in on it but you. That's normal. Analogue didn't launch the Duo out of nowhere in a random flight of fancy. It's just the latest of a few recent instances of NEC's 3rd or 4th gen console, depending on who you ask, being pushed into the cultural consciousness. The first of these noteworthy moments was its prominent inclusion in the narrative of the anime series High Score Girl, where the PC Engine featured heavily in the early plot of the show, and was depicted quite accurately as a very cost-effective platform aimed quite directly at arcade enthusiasts. The producers of the show did a fantastic job of shining a huge spotlight on the system and its strengths, as main protagonist Haru Yaguchi really sells it to anyone who will listen as the best way to get the arcade experience at home in 1991 without breaking the bank, and even brings up a good number of its foundational games to that end. Now, none of this comes as a surprise because High Score Girl is a really good slice-of-life series set in the background of Japan's 90s gaming scene, written by an author who actually knows his stuff. But the PC Engine's inclusion was a welcome addition to the narrative that by no means had to be there, and it helped get a whole new generation of gamers and anime fans in the know about it. The second awareness-raising event in recent years was Konami's release of a retro mini version of the console. Well, 3 of them if we're being technical, because depending on where you lived, you were either buying a PC Engine Mini, a TurboGrafx 16 Mini, or a Core Graphics Mini. Now, Mini is a bit of a stretch because Konami clearly didn't get the memo on how far Nintendo, Sega, and Sony were scaling these machines down for their reproductions. But those of us who were lucky enough to get our hands on them know that's all a minor gripe in the face of everything the system did for preservation and awareness of both the platform as a whole and the import gaming scene that sprung up from it as a result. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time explaining the latter point because I already did a whole video on the topic of its ties to import gaming, which I'll leave a link to up here in the top right. The main thing you need to know is that if you're going to get the most out of your Analogue Duo, you will be dealing with import games sooner or later, but by no means should that intimidate you, as much of the system's Japanese selection is still very English-friendly, which makes NEC's unwillingness to bring so much of it across the Pacific back in the 90s thoroughly mystifying to this day. If both of these events, the release of High Score Girl and Konami's mini reproductions, came and went without adding you to the list of those aware of the PC Engine and its associated platforms, you are indeed a part of the third wave of newcomers to the system's community. Welcome! Now it's time to get to know your newest console. The first thing you're likely to notice are the 2 media slots rather than just the usual one found on most consoles. That's because the PC Engine started out as a very small device that was built to play games on roughly credit card-shaped cartridges called HuCards, or occasionally turbo chips in the West. That's the slot on the left side of your Duo. Not long after its launch, however, a CD-ROM attachment was rolled out, which is represented by the much wider slot on the right. Now, much like the Sega Saturn had with its RAM cartridges and the Nintendo 64 had with the expansion pack, the PC Engine did eventually use RAM chips to expand the system's capabilities, putting the HuCard slot to use even when playing CD-ROM titles. First with the CD-ROM card, then the Super CD card, and finally the arcade card. Now thankfully you don't have to worry about any of this because all of these upgrades were built into the Analogue Duo, which means you can focus on what really matters, the games. I'll just get the shmups out of the way first because they've always clearly been the star of the show with this system. While being a shmup fan is by no means a prerequisite when buying into the PC Engine, not being one is kind of like going into Arby's for a burger instead of a roast beef or chicken sandwich, or Domino's for pasta instead of a pizza. You'll probably still enjoy what you got just fine, but it's definitely not what they built their reputation on. That being said, big-ticket shmups are among the most expensive games on the platform, and I'd really encourage you to stay away from buying actual copies of games like Magical Chase or Nexer when there's a healthy reproduction scene out there. Absolutely do business with good retro dealers that are selling authentic games at a reasonable price, but don't feed the profiteers who are lining their pockets to the tune of hundreds if not thousands of dollars on specific games that are being made available through other means for a much more acceptable price. Help the market correct itself and let's work to get those prices down together. I'll leave a link to a good repro seller in the description and also point you toward Hit Japan from Digital Akiba #1 as they're getting into the business of selling Hue cards repurposed as rarer titles. But also know that they're just the tip of the iceberg. Honestly, that piece of advice extends well beyond shmups. Putting the issue of price aside, there are shmups for you on the system no matter what you want from the genre. Now, anytime I get on the subject of shmups on the PC Engine, I always have to open the conversation with my personal favorite, Final Soldier. Ironically named, as there were games in the Star Soldier series beyond it, I really consider it the best jumping-on point for PC Engine shmups compared to its more expensive and mostly more difficult counterparts. Once you get your legs under you with it and know how you feel about it, you can progress very naturally to the other games in the series, Super Star Soldier, Soldier Blade, and Star Parodier, as well as stuff like Nexer and Gunhead, aka Blazing Lasers, depending on which region you're buying that from. There are also good picks on the side-scrolling side of things as well, with Aeroblasters, Dead Moon. For the love of all that is good, do not pay the going market price for an authentic copy of Dead Moon. Super Raiden, R-Type Complete CD, Gate of Thunder, and Lords of Thunder, just to name a few. Colorful and generally accessible cute-em-ups are there in the form of games like Airzonk, Cotton, and Magical Chase, but once again I must implore you not to pay speculators and other profiteers for authentic copies of these games. Co-op fans, you won't be left out either. Konami is out here in force with Gradius, Salamander, or what we call Life Force here in the West, and Parodiasta to lead the charge on the two-player front. Once you've got a good handle on all of these, more challenging games like Ginkafuke Densetsu Sapphire and Seirei Senshi Spriggan will be there to graduate to. One last mention in the genre is Dino Force. Particularly worthy of mention because it's a relatively new release, having come out in 2022 as a PC Engine 35th anniversary tribute. I haven't spent as much time with it as I would like, but this is definitely one to get behind to support the continued development of PC Engine titles, which is absolutely a possibility if you consider the fact that the Sega Genesis also has over 30 games in active development right now. There's no reason the PC Engine can't enjoy a similar movement, and as an Analogue Duo owner, that would only help further the feel-good story of this system. You can pick Dino Force up from the fine folks over at PCE Works, which I'll be sure to leave a link for you in the description. Of course, going over every noteworthy shmup on the PC Engine at length would require multiple full-length videos without even touching on other genres on the platform or the particularities of the Analogue Duo itself. So I'll just give you that list as a starting point. Moving on, one genre that the PC Engine has some very good games from, particularly when compared to what was going on over on other systems at the time, is that of driving and racing games, and even includes some cases of multi-platform games that were really best on the PC Engine. Of course, I have to open this discussion with Outrun, because the effort that went into making this version of the game feel as close to the arcade as possible really paid off in the end. The most common praise and complaint about arcade ports to the PC Engine was that whatever sacrifices needed to be made from an audio-visual fidelity standpoint in order to maximize arcade gameplay accuracy were made, and Outrun may be the best example of this. It is a bit of a shame that the sound took as much of a hit as it did, because this is one of the great game soundtracks of the 80s, and the only way to make it come through clearly is to disable the sound effects entirely in the settings, which, as a mercy, was made an option. But the gameplay experience is second to none until the Saturn and Dreamcast came along. One racing game I really try to shine a spotlight on with this channel is Final Lap Twin. Two-player racing games weren't unheard of when this came along, but it took the rest of the genre a long time to catch up to what this one accomplished, including this same title's NES port, which was lacking the detailed race ranking system and the entire RPG mode. That's right, in addition to the kart racing and F1 seasons you can play through, there's an entire RPG to play here that really could be regarded as a precursor to the career modes in later racing games like Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport. Plus one of the coolest video game dads ever. Feeling down because you just lost your latest race? Here's $300 to trick out your car to blast that prick off the road. It was 1989. You could actually trick out a car on $300 in 1989. There are other great driving and racing titles to try out as well, like Victory Run, which is kind of a PC Engine staple at this point, classics like Chase HQ and SCI, a Knight Rider game that fit in very well alongside them, or deeper stuff like Bari Bari Densetsu and F1 Triple Battle. The one I want to touch on here, though, is much simpler, and it wouldn't even be difficult to believe it reviewed poorly back in the day for that simplicity. Road Spirits is kind of like one part Outrun, one part Cruisin', with a very minimalist approach. I love it because, well, my idea of cozy gaming is a little different than some people's. As one example, if I can fall asleep with it running in the background or with a gameplay video of it on, it's relaxed enough for my tastes. There are just certain games out there that are unintentionally chill. The right audio-visual direction can give games a relaxing vibe all by itself, and I put things like Street Fighter Alpha 2, most Ridge Racer games, and Wave Race 64 in that category. The thing with Road Spirits is, the gameplay itself is so laid back that it's hard to convince me that the chill factor is in any way accidental. This is a relaxing weekend drive masquerading as a time attack, and I love it for that. The foundation of retro gaming is the action platformer, and there are plenty of good ones to pick up for your brand new Analogue Duo. In fact, the PC Engine is home to the quintessential import title, Castlevania Rondo of Blood, still widely regarded as the best traditional Castlevania game, if not outright the best game in the series. Beyond that, the Bonk Trilogy, Legendary Acts 1 and 2, the Shockman or Shubibinman series, and yes, Keith Courageous Alpha Zones or Machine Yuden Wataru are all good additions to your library. In addition, you have a couple of rebranded Wonder Boy titles in the form of Bikrimon World and The Dynastic Hero, a great port of Ninja Ryukenden or Ninja Gaiden with multi-language support, the Valis series, and Kadash. Exile and Exile 2 also deserve mention here despite not being strict adherents to the action platform genre. They're kind of hybrids. Looking into other titles, one that I always like to touch on is Military Madness or Nectaris, kind of a hexagonal version of Advance Wars set in space. This was well ahead of its time when it released, even including features like a two-player versus mode, and it has aged remarkably well. There was a port of it over on the PlayStation, but even this original game holds up very well and is one that I absolutely had to include in this video. Finally, one major highlight of the PC Engine's game library is its multiplayer selection, as the system's lone controller port actually hides the fact quite well that its multitap has 5 ports on it. This enables you to play games like Dungeon Explorer 1 and 2, 3 Bomberman titles, the best of which is 94, Fire Pro Wrestling, and all manner of sports titles with 4 or 5 players. It probably goes without saying, but adding controller ports also gives you the ability to play fighting games with another person, and I'd be remiss not to mention games like Street Fighter II Champion Edition and Fatal Fury Special as outstanding offerings in that corner of the PC Engine's library. Of course, you'll want a 6-button controller to play these, and for that you have 2 options: NEC's first-party Avenue Pad 6 or Hori's Fighting Commander PC, the latter of which is part of a brand and line that still thrive to this day. The fact of the matter is, I could go on for hours giving recommendations and reminiscing about the depth of this system's library, but it's probably best that I leave it here, and that's probably what the comments section is for anyway. So if you have any questions about the system and the games available for it, leave them down in the comments section and I'll do my best to address them all. Trust me, you've made a good investment in your gaming setup here. I do have my misgivings about a huge influx of new players entering the market for PC Engine and TurboGrafx games with conditions already being what they are, but that simply exemplifies the importance of reproduction outfits like PCE Works to keep supply in line with demand. And once again, I highly encourage you to give them your business before you start paying 3 or 4 figures to some reseller to get the system's more sought-after releases. As it stands right now, there is no way to give the publishers and developers your money anyway. However you decide to play your Analogue Duo, though, welcome aboard. You're about to enjoy one of gaming's best-kept secrets, and I look forward to watching a new wave of players explore it for themselves. That's all for now. If you like this video, then as always, send that message to YouTube with your likes, comments, shares, and subscribes. Click the notification bell to know right away when a new video drops. I look forward to seeing you back here next time at Little Akiba Games.